A brutal verdict from a trusted mentor. A future in question. A Red Bull seat on the line. And just days before Laurent Mekies detonates the bombshell. For years, Yuki Tsunoda was supposed to be the future. Red Bull saw in him something rare: unfiltered aggression, fearless precision, and that spark of unpredictability that makes a driver unforgettable. When he arrived on the Formula One grid, he didn't ask for permission, he took space. He was loud, unapologetic, and breathtakingly fast. For a team system built around control and calculation, Tsunoda was chaos, but useful chaos. The kind that made things exciting again. Yet in Formula One, what makes you special can just as easily destroy you. At first, the mistakes were tolerated. AlphaTauri, now Racing Bulls, knew what they were signing up for: a young driver learning at high speed under impossible pressure. And for a while, the flashes of brilliance outweighed the errors. There were weekends where Tsunoda looked electric, pulling overtakes that few dared attempt, finding pace in conditions that confused others. He had the raw instincts Red Bull prized. But over time, the same fire that made him fearless began to burn the team's patience. Small mistakes turned into patterns. Emotional outbursts over radio became weekly features. Engineers started to see it not as passion, but as volatility. Laurent Mekies refused to give up on him. When others inside the Red Bull structure questioned whether Tsunoda had plateaued, Mekies argued that maturity was a process, not a deadline. He reorganized the garage to reduce communication overload, changed debrief protocols to help Yuki focus, and even shielded him from senior criticism when results fell short. "He's a work in progress," Mekies would say. "But he's worth the work." Those words carried weight. They kept Tsunoda safe during contract reviews, even as his results drifted around the lower end of the midfield. Mekies believed his aggression could be refined into something powerful. What he couldn't predict was that it might instead become a wall. This season, that wall has grown taller. Tsunoda's natural speed hasn't vanished, but it's no longer enough. The 2025 grid is the most competitive in a decade, and Red Bull's junior teams operate under a microscope. Every lap is recorded, every error dissected. For Mekies, defending Yuki became harder with each missed opportunity. The Singapore Grand Prix was the final trigger. On a weekend when the car had genuine points potential, Tsunoda overpushed in qualifying and made an early race error that destroyed his tires. It wasn't catastrophic, but it was symbolic, the kind of mistake a driver in his 5th season shouldn't make. After the race, Mekies' tone changed for the first time. Gone was the careful optimism, replaced by blunt realism. "We've given Yuki every chance," he said. "Now it's up to him." Inside Formula One's political language, that's as close to a farewell as you'll ever hear. It wasn't anger, it was exhaustion. Mekies sounded like a man who had tried everything and realized it wasn't working. The comments weren't offhand, they were measured. They were meant to signal something. When a team principal speaks that way publicly, it means the internal conversations are already over. The story of Yuki Tsunoda's decline isn't just emotional. It's mechanical. Beneath the headlines about outbursts and pressure lies a brutal technical reality. Tsunoda's natural style no longer fits the modern Formula One car he's driving. When he arrived in 2021, his aggressiveness was an advantage. Cars were more predictable, heavier on the front end, and easier to rotate under throttle. He could throw the car into a corner, manage the slide, and let instinct carry him through. But today's ground effect machines don't reward instinct. They punish it. They demand stability, rhythm, and micro-adjustments, a kind of calculated patience that goes against Tsunoda's DNA as a racer. Inside the Racing Bulls engineering team, the frustration has been growing for months. Tsunoda's feedback is raw, emotional, and immediate, useful in flashes, but often too subjective to translate into measurable progress. Engineers have complained privately that while his pace is impressive on clear laps, his inability to adapt to changing balance conditions during long stints costs the team valuable data. In Formula One's hybrid era of constant adjustment, that gap isn't small, it's fatal. Daniel Ricciardo's experience and precision make him easier to tune the car around. Tsunoda, by contrast, feels like a storm they can't control. Laurent Mekies tried to help. Early in the season, he ordered a series of engineering adjustments designed specifically to calm Tsunoda's driving experience. The brake pedal mapping was softened to improve control under heavy load. The steering rack ratio was modified to slow his inputs. Even the throttle response was reshaped to smooth out traction control in high-speed corners. Each change helped a little, but only a little. Tsunoda's natural aggression always returned. His approach to driving is reactive, not predictive. It's what makes him thrilling to watch, but devastating to engineer. At the heart of the issue is how modern Formula One cars communicate. Today's machines are built around digital correlation feedback from sensors, not from emotion. The car doesn't care about bravery, it cares about precision. The driver who adapts to the data succeeds. The driver who fights it, even slightly, gets punished. In this era, communication between man and machine is as much technical as it is psychological. And this is where Tsunoda's struggles reveal something deeper: a lack of trust. When he doesn't feel in control, he overdrives. When he overdrives, the data lies. The engineers lose confidence, and the cycle continues. That loss of confidence has now spread through the garage. Tsunoda's side of the team, once a tight unit, feels isolated. The engineers know every setup adjustment could be their last with him. The mechanics, once fiercely loyal, whisper about his frustration. They see the signs: the early helmet off after qualifying, the quiet exits from debriefs, the long stares at the timing screens. These aren't outbursts anymore, they're silences. And in Formula One, silence from a driver is worse than anger. It means resignation. It means the fight is fading. For Mekies, this is the hardest part to watch. He built his career on nurturing young talent, guiding emotion into discipline. With Tsunoda, he thought he could do the same. But this isn't about temper anymore. It's about evolution. Formula One has evolved faster than Tsunoda's driving style could. The very traits that once made him electric, the aggression, the raw instinct, the emotional drive, now make him incompatible with the modern technical era. Mekies knows it. The engineers know it. And perhaps, deep down, Tsunoda does too. In Formula One, the real shock doesn't come from the words themselves, it comes from who says them. And when Laurent Mekies spoke, the entire paddock listened. His statement after Singapore wasn't emotional, it wasn't theatrical, and that made it more devastating. "We've supported Yuki with everything we can," he said calmly. "Now the responsibility is his." No anger. No frustration. Just conclusion. Those who have worked in the sport long enough recognized it immediately. That wasn't a warning. It was the beginning of an exit. Within hours, Mekies' comments had spread through the paddock like wildfire. Journalists circled the Red Bull hospitality unit, waiting for confirmation. The timing couldn't have been worse or more deliberate. Red Bull's driver evaluations for 2026 were underway that same week, and the Racing Bulls performance reports were already on the desk of Helmut Marko and Christian Horner. Mekies' words didn't just express disappointment. They were a signal. It was his way of telling the decision-makers above him that he'd done all he could, that if Tsunoda were to stay, it would no longer be under his protection. Inside the team, the mood turned cold. Engineers who had worked with Tsunoda since his rookie season described the atmosphere as strangely quiet. There were no arguments, no confrontations, just resignation. One engineer told Sky Sports off record, "It felt like everyone knew the story was over, but no one wanted to say it aloud." Mekies, usually open and communicative, stopped attending Tsunoda's performance briefings personally. Instead, he delegated to his race engineers. It was a small detail, but in Formula One, details reveal everything. The bridge between mentor and driver had finally collapsed. Red Bull's response was equally telling. When asked about Tsunoda's future, Helmut Marko's answer was short and surgical: "Yuki has had chances. We'll evaluate." That's all it took. Within a single news cycle, Tsunoda went from developing talent to replaceable asset. The headlines told the story better than anyone could. Mekies turns on Tsunoda, Red Bull running out of patience, Lawson or Iwasa next in line. What had been a private conversation inside the team's walls was now international news, and the man at the center of it all had gone silent. For Yuki Tsunoda, that silence was deafening. Those close to him say he withdrew completely in the days that followed. He skipped optional media duties, limited his press appearances, and spent long hours in the simulator alone. When he finally spoke to the media in Japan, his words were brief and heavy. "If the team doesn't believe in me, I have to change their minds." It sounded determined, but his tone was broken. There was no fire, no spark, just the exhaustion of someone realizing that their career might no longer be in their hands. The emotional fracture between Mekies and Tsunoda runs deeper than performance. It's personal. Mekies was the one who convinced Red Bull to give Yuki another year when others wanted him replaced. He was the one who shielded him from internal politics, who reminded the higher-ups that development takes time. And now, by publicly criticizing him, Mekies didn't just close the chapter, he made it official. When a mentor publicly distances himself from his protege in Formula One, it's the final act. There are no comebacks from that. As the paddock heads to Austin, Tsunoda finds himself in an unfamiliar position, alone. No backing, no guarantees, no promises of patience. Just one final stretch of races to prove that he can still belong. The team isn't saying it outright, but everyone knows what this weekend means. If he delivers something extraordinary, maybe there's a lifeline. If not, this could be the end of his Red Bull journey and perhaps his Formula One journey altogether.